Here's something strange. Humans were making bread thousands of years before we even figured out how to farm the wheat to make it. That single fact rewrites a lot of what we assume about early civilization. Today, let's find out who actually invented bread, how it works at a molecular level, and why one loaf of it survived a volcanic eruption for 2,000 years. Let's begin. Older than farming itself. In modern-day Israel, archaeologists found evidence of humans processing wild cereal grains dating back 22,000 years ago, thousands of years before agriculture even existed. These weren't farmers. They were foragers who had already figured out how to turn wild grass seeds into something edible. Then, in Jordan's Black Desert, researchers uncovered the remains of a flatbread dated to roughly 14,000 years ago, once used to wrap roasted meat. One researcher called it the earliest evidence of anything we could really call a cuisine, a genuine mixed food creation, not just raw ingredients eaten separately. 2. The loaf frozen in time. Thousands of years later, in the Roman city of Pompeii, a baker placed a round loaf of bread into an oven and never got the chance to take it out. When Mount Vesuvius erupted in 79 AD, the volcanic ash carbonized that loaf perfectly, preserving it, stamp marks and all, for nearly 2,000 years, until archaeologists uncovered it intact. It's a strange kind of time capsule. The last thing that Roman kitchen ever made, frozen exactly as it was the moment history stopped. 3. Egypt's bread revolution. By the time bread reached ancient Egypt, it stopped being just flatbread. Egyptian bakers, who were also enthusiastic beer brewers, discovered that the same yeast helping their beer ferment could make dough rise, creating some of the very first leavened bread in history. They also began experimenting with multigrain flours. By around 1000 BCE, bread had spread across the Mediterranean and become a dietary staple across Europe, a calorie-dense, carbohydrate-rich food that gave early civilizations the fuel to shift from foraging to farming, and eventually to building empires.
Here's what's actually happening inside your loaf while it bakes. First, an enzyme called amylase breaks the starch in flour down into simple sugars. Then yeast, a single-celled fungus, eats that sugar and releases carbon dioxide as a byproduct, which is what makes dough rise. Meanwhile, kneading combines water with two proteins in the flour to form gluten, long, stretchy strands strong enough to trap those gas bubbles instead of letting them escape, giving bread its soft, pillowy texture. Finally, in the oven, the Maillard reaction browns the crust as sugars and amino acids interact to create that unmistakable nutty, roasted aroma. 5 separate reactions working together just to make toast.
5. Bread as ancient medicine. Long before antibiotics existed, ancient Egyptian healers were already onto something. The Ebers Papyrus, a medical text dating to around 1550 BCE, describes applying moldy bread to wounds to help treat infections, more than 3,000 years before Alexander Fleming's accidental discovery of penicillin in 1928, made from a very similar type of mold. They didn't understand bacteria. They just noticed that something about the moldy bread seemed to help. An early, imperfect glimpse of a discovery that would eventually save millions of lives.
5 breads, 5 stories. Not all bread rose the same way. Unleavened breads like early tortillas go back roughly 30,000 years and never needed yeast at all. Leavened bread, using yeast to trap gas, emerged around 1000 BCE. Sourdough took a different route entirely, relying on wild yeast naturally present in fermented flour, tracing back to Egypt around 1500 BCE. Much later, in the 1940s, bakers began enriching dough with butter and eggs to fight nutritional deficiencies. And in the early 2000s, gluten-free bread arrived, using binders like xanthan gum to hold everything together without gluten at all. Here's the surprising part. The average UK household still buys more than 80 loaves of bread a year, and pre-sliced bread, something that feels like it's always existed, was only invented in 1928, the very same year Fleming discovered penicillin. Two of history's most useful discoveries born in the exact same year, both eventually traced back to the same humble loaf of bread. The next time you smell fresh bread baking, you're smelling something humans have been chasing for over 20,000 years. If this fed your curiosity today, share it with someone who'd enjoy it too.